calendar. I'm sure you've got a lot of information that you need to pass on to the rest of us. First up, bill introductions. Chair recognizes my vice chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have RS 2420, which I am introducing on behalf of a constituent dealing with the Kansas Amusement Ride Act.
Okay, Mike, you have that one? Right, okay. Who was the drafter on that one?
Matt started it.
Okay, Matt started it, good. Good enough. We have one bill to hear this morning, but is there any other bill introductions from committee members? From the audience then. Mr. Speaker.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mike O'Neill on behalf of Walmart. We have 22 RS 2733, which is a beer and liquor retailer delivery bill. And just for the committee's information, this would replace the bill that we had introduced last year. The new bill is based on further conversations and your interim study.
Right. Ed, I think it's next Tuesday, committee, we will have an update by our research about the interim committee that we had this past summer on the modernization of alcohol regulations and our laws. And he'll go through the entire committee's report. I think they can get that online, correct, Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, if you visit the KLRD website, and Mr. Chair, if you'd like me to, I can show them on the website right now, but...
Could you do that?
Yeah.
And I just want members to be able to look at that report before we have a hearing on it.
And I can email it out to the committee as well.
Okay. If you'd email it out to committee, I think that would be helpful. But sure. Go ahead and put the website up.
Okay, just one second. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jordan Milholland with KLRD. If you can see on your screen now, I've got my mouse on the committees tab of the KLRD website. If you scroll down, we've got our interim committees listed on here. There's a 2021 special committee on liquor law modernization. Then on that page, there's a link to the report PDF that you can download, and that's the full report on there that you should be able to access. And I'll go ahead and email it out to the committee as well.
Thank you. And before we start any business, I'm going to ask my WebEx monitor to tell me who's on. We have a number of members that are not here today, and many of them have good medical reasons. They've tested positive. But some of them are indicated they're going to be on WebEx. So if you'd go through that, members.
Are you done with me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. We've accepted your bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those are the members of the committee, other than Connie. Connie is here. But we have those members on. Representative Reese is on as a ranking member. I was notified that Representative Heiberger would be here by WebEx and hopes to be back with us next week. And we're going to have this. This is going to be a constant reoccurrence during this year. People are going to be missing and appearing by WebEx. Also, and I'll try to identify, or will identify, before we work a bill. I'll give you a day or so notice. And if you can't appear, let me know. Or let the ranking member know so that he may want to get a replacement for you when we work the bills. We have one bill today. There's no further bill introductions, correct? Then bill introductions are closed. The reviser, if you'd give us an overview of House Concurrent Resolution 5022.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this House concurrent resolution would amend the Kansas Constitution to add a new section. Basically, the section would provide for the election of a county sheriff for a term of 4 years, and there is an exception if there was the office of sheriff had been abolished prior to January the 11th, 2021, that this constitutional amendment would not apply. I've distributed a little sheet here to give you a little background information. Riley County voters in 1972, according to a statute that authorized them to do so, put the issue of a consolidated law enforcement department to the voters. It passed by about 1,500 votes more in favor than against, and they've had a unified or a county police department, I guess is what they call it, since January 1st of 1974. The other little difference in county sheriff's offices is Wyandotte County. The unified government of Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County elects a sheriff, but it's on a nonpartisan basis, and the duties are somewhat reduced because of the nature of the unified government, and that election is in odd-numbered years with city elections because it is a unified city-county government and so on. So if you've got questions, I will point out one more thing, that in 1876, there was a constitutional amendment adopted to make the county sheriff a constitutional office, and that remained in the Constitution until, I think, 1904. And then it was amended out. But it was, at one point in time, the sheriff was a constitutional office. That's it.
Okay, I have a question for you, Mike. Sure. The other change is on a recall election or writ, an ouster petition filed can only be brought by the Attorney General. Presently, it can be brought by a county attorney. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that would be a change?
It would be a change.
Okay. Any questions of the reviser? Seeing none? Oh, yes, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Heim, as you know, Shawnee County, or most counties operate a jail under the purview of the sheriff's office. Shawnee County does not. It's independent of the sheriff. Does this affect that situation?
No.
Thank you.
Yes, Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From what I can tell, this constitutional amendment would not impact whether or not counties can make the decision whether to have nonpartisan elections?
No, it would not.
Okay.
It doesn't require that the elections be partisan. It just requires that they be elected.
Okay, and then in your report, it says that the Riley County Sheriff was created this department after an election, so a vote was held by the people of that county. And, you know, my understanding, we have one charter county in Kansas, Johnson County, and the process for that is a charter commission appointed by not just the Board of County Commissioners, multiple appointees from the state delegation, local parties. And then if that commission would approve a change, it would go to the Board of County Commissioners and then go before the voters of that county. Is it possible to create an appointed sheriff position without that going before the voters of that county currently?
There is a statute, it's KSA 123903, which is a consolidation of functions law that was passed back in 1974. It does permit the elimination of county elected offices if there's an election, This constitutional amendment would supersede that statute, however, and sheriffs would have to be elected, so they would not be subject to that statute. You're correct in terms of Johnson County has a charter commission. Apparently, they're in the middle of studying whether or not to put the issue of not electing the sheriff to make it a point of office. I don't think they've actually come to a resolution of that, but somebody else here may be able to answer that.
Thank you. Just a follow-up for clarification, because I'm a little confused. Because my understanding of what this constitutional amendment would do would basically be taking, instead of having it be the local voters in that county, this would be a decision made by the state. So I'm confused whether or not there could be a change without an election locally.
That's correct. I mean, this in the Constitution, if it's constitutional office, it requires an election. It would supersede a charter provision that's specific for Johnson County. I think Sedgwick County, I can't recall if that bill passed or not, but they wanted to be part of that charter process. And whatever statutes are in place would be superseded by this constitutional amendment.
Thank you. No further questions? Thank you, Mike. We have a number of proponents, and first up will be Greg Smith with the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. Good morning and welcome to Federal and State Affairs.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Committee, thank you for having me here today. I'm going to be very brief because I'm going to let the sheriffs address the issues, but speaking specifically to a charter county, which Johnson County is, in full transparency, I was appointed to the Charter Commission this year and serve on that commission. We had overwhelming testimony from the citizens of Johnson County that they do not want an appointed sheriff. That was an amendment to our charter that came up and was discussed. As I recall, that vote was defeated 21-4. There's a 25-member commission. And I'll leave it at that and let the sheriffs address any other questions that you have, and I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next up would be Sheriff Jeff Easter, Kansas Sheriff's Association. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the committee.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to testify today. My name is Jeff Easter. I am the Kansas Sheriff's Association Legislative Chair and also Sheriff of Sedgwick County. So what you have in front of you is HCR 5022, which is probably singly the most important piece of legislation that the Kansas Sheriff's Association has taken on in the last several years. And the reason that we think that it is so important is because we believe that there has been some erosion to the office of sheriff. Our goals of this particular resolution is to observe the office of sheriff consistently throughout the state of Kansas, allows the office of sheriff to be required by the Constitution, and assures appropriate ouster process for the office of sheriff. Why it is important is some discussion has gone on about Johnson County. We've also had other counties that have attempted to do away with the office of sheriff in Phillips County, Shawnee County, Bourbon County, and Reno County. The fact of the matter is that we absolutely believe that the voters should have the power to vote who they want to be as sheriff. If someone is not doing a good job, they're held accountable by their voters, just like everybody else in this room. We do not believe that power should ride with commissioners, a commission of 3, a commission of 5. We do not believe that that is a good way to select and appoint the top law enforcement officer in that particular county. Next has to do again with voter empowerment. We are set up, we're a law or a nation of laws, a nation of elections to allow the constituents to vote for who they want in those particular spots. What's gone on in Johnson County, what's been talked about in Sedgwick County erodes that process. And again, law enforcement should not be a political animal. Other than when we run for office, law enforcement or being the sheriff is based upon the laws, period. When you have other people appointing that particular entity, politics can become part of that person because now they're being controlled by other entities that have political interests. What it does not do, does not make the office of sheriff a state of Kansas office, does not change any of the duties of the sheriff, nor does it place those duties in the Constitution, does not shift any liability to the state, does not change the legal process of ousters except who can file the action. That is the second piece of this. The reason for that is twofold. You can have and have had county attorneys or district attorneys and sheriffs that are completely opposites and do not get along. And sometimes those ouster processes have been filed due to that reason. But secondly, you can also have district attorneys and county attorneys that are really good friends with the sheriff that refuse to file an ouster process when maybe one is deserved. We believe that process should be independent, which would lie with the Attorney General's office. Consolidation has been one of the questions asked when we spoke to numerous entities or other associations and then entities within the House of Representatives and leadership within the Senate. This does not affect consolidation. As it was said before by the gentleman that spoke before, Wyandotte County does have what's considered to be some consolidation. However, they still do have a sheriff. There has been talk about some counties, because they're less populated nowadays in some parts of western Kansas, of putting those counties together. This would not stop that. It just would require, once those counties form together, that they would have to have a sheriff. Consolidation is something that is done quite often between cities and counties on a variety of issues. It is still possible to do consolidation through this. The only requirement would be is you still have to have a jail. I've worked both with the Wichita Police Department, retired there as a captain, and I've worked as a sheriff. There is big differences between sheriff's offices and police departments. I will tell you, in the county that I work in, they talked about consolidation about 15 years ago. The folks in the unincorporated areas absolutely, to an nth degree, did not want to have anything to do with the Wichita Police Department, because they felt that they had better service that was catered to them from sheriff's offices, not from a big city. Secondly, the fact of the matter is if you look at state statutes having to do with sheriff's offices, there is a litany of state statutes and what we're required to do compared to police departments. There's a reason for that, because we're entrusted with the jail. I understand Shawnee County did a separate issue, which is fine. But in state statute, that's who it's relegated to. Civil process, the guarding of courtrooms, those are not done by police departments. They are done by sheriff's offices. Lastly, when we talk about elections, what we want to see out of this is that it passes through this committee, and if it passes both the Senate and the House, then it would go to the voters in the next general election here in November for their vote on whether it should be what we're proposing. So with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions now or at a later point.
Thank you, Sheriff. Questions for the Sheriff? Yes, Representative Armberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff Easter, thank you so much for coming up here today. Quick question for you. You mentioned in recent years, attempts to eliminate the sheriff's office occurred in Phillips, Shawnee, Bourbon, and Reno counties. Could you explain why, like what the examples were of why they wanted to do that and how long ago that happened?
Shawnee County, around 2004, had a resolution to consolidate with the Topeka PD, and similar in Riley County to what Riley County does now. And if I didn't mention, the gentleman before mentioned, this only applies to 104 counties. It does not apply to Riley County, who already has their law enforcement entity set up. The way it was done in Topeka was they took a vote of Topeka residents that live in the city limits of Topeka. They also took a vote of the outlying areas, the unincorporated areas, the smaller cities in the county, and it had to pass both those entities to pass as a whole. And so it didn't pass with the entities on the outside, so it didn't go through. Phillips County is a little bit different. You had somebody that was in the commission, son ran for sheriff, didn't win, and wanted to abolish the office of sheriff. And so those are the things that we have to stay above as political entities, because from a law enforcement standpoint, if you don't like the person that is sheriff, then in 4 years you can vote them out. And so it shouldn't be done on the whim of just one individual or a group of individuals because they have the power to do so.
But also on the other side, if someone gets appointed as sheriff, the public doesn't necessarily have any recall. They would have to go to the hiring authority, which may be a commission or maybe maybe the county
For
commissioner.
police chiefs, it's
Right.
the mayor and the council, or if you have a law board.
And so it'd be a different process.
Correct.
Where presently with the voters, they get to decide. Instead of
They get
going
to
through
decide. There's also an ouster process,
Right.
Which we're supportive of for sheriffs that have made mistakes, that they can be removed.
Okay. Further questions of the sheriff? Yes, Representative Miller.
Well, I need to correct the record, with all due respect to Sheriff Easter. In Shawnee County, it was not a proposal to have the police department take over the sheriff. It was a total city-county consolidation question that was first sanctioned by statute. The process was sanctioned by statute by this legislature. A commission was appointed. They made recommendations to the voters on a consolidated government. It did not eliminate that. The proposal did not eliminate the sheriff's office. It preserved it. It expanded the sheriff's duties and responsibilities from county to county and city. So rather than strip the sheriff of any power, the question was actually giving them more power. The voters chose not to go that route. That statute's still on the book. Someday in the future, Shawnee County and the city of Topeka may again be looking at consolidation. And as I understand it, passage of this constitutional amendment would now eliminate or reduce the options that they have to put before the voters.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. I was on the commission at the time.
You were on the city commission. I
was on the county commission.
County commission, that's right. All right, thank you. Further discussion or questions for the sheriff? Yes, Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff Easter, thank you so much for your testimony here today. Concerning Wichita, Sedgwick County, we do know that that bill came before from the Senate last year. What was your understanding of the appetite down in that region concerning that county commission consolidation?
So when the Charter Commission statute was put into place, there's something that commissioner and some commissioners wanted to correct. And basically what it calls for is that when you form the committee, it would have to be Johnson County residents. And so instead of Sedgwick County residents. Now, in the background of that, there was some statements made that the reason that they wanted to get that bill corrected, that it was Sedgwick County residents, was to do away with some other elected officials within county government.
And as a follow-on, if I may, Mr. Chair, when it came to that particular that bill, it's gone before the people in that area. Would they, with that setup, would they have the people, the voters, would they have any way of influencing that charter commission for recall if people are appointed to it? How do the voters get their input there?
That I don't know, because they've never set up the charter commission in Sedgwick County like they have in Johnson County, so I'm not very familiar with that, sir.
Oh, Representative Wagner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff Easter, thank you very much for your testimony. It's been very helpful. I did want to ask, I am from Reno County. I kind of remember the issue with the changes proposed on the sheriff. Could you elaborate a little bit about what the story was in Reno County?
Actually, we have the Reno County Sheriff here. In what Representative Miller, that was the context that was presented to us. So I'm glad he clarified, but that's not what we were told, the whole thing. So I would prefer to, Darren, if you would like to come up.
I'm going to stop you there. You're not listening.
Okay.
I can't let you. Representative Wagner, you can talk to him after the end of conclusion. He's your sheriff, so. Further questions of Sheriff Easter? Seeing none. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
I will direct you to the written proponent testimony of the Attorney General, Derek Schmidt, who is a proponent. Anyone else? I have no one else listed. I just need to look at my WebEx guy. Just for those that are on WebEx, I needed to remind you, if you have a question, hit the button to raise your hand. Didn't see any of those. I'm handing a note here. Boog is raising his hand. Representative Heiberger? Sorry, he just handed me that note. Do you have a question? If you have a question, please, go ahead.
Chair, I have a research question.
Research, go ahead.
Do you know how many other states have constitutionally established sheriffs?
Go ahead, research.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We could look into that for you if you'd like to know that, and we could put some information for you together for the next meeting or next week, if that's okay.
Okay.
I would appreciate that.
Okay. There's one of the folks in the audience that says he has that information. I will allow you to come up and offer that, but then you have to put it in writing and submit it to my secretary so she can get that out to the committee. If you'll come up, state your name, and it concerns only that information.
My name is Sandy Horton. I'm the executive director.
The microphone on? It's blue light if it is. There you go.
My name is Sandy Horton, Executive Director, Kansas Sheriff Association. I did that research with the executive directors of the surrounding states of Kansas. In Missouri, the office of the sheriff is mentioned in their constitution 3 times, but is created through the legislature. In Colorado, the office of the sheriff is created through state constitution. In Oklahoma, the office of the sheriff is created through state constitution. In Nebraska, the office of the sheriff is created legislatively. And in Arkansas, the office of the sheriff is created through state constitution.
Thank you. Was that helpful, Representative Heiberger? I will still have research do that.
Yes, thank you.
You're quite welcome. No further questions? Yep. Representative Epley? And direct your question to one of the conferees.
Well, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't know if you'd give me a license to ask Mike a question about the history of 1905. Not that anyone was around then, but I just curious.
Some say you were, but
well,
it's okay.
I was going to go there with you, but I was trying to be polite.
But yes, Mike may have been.
So I appreciate the trip down memory lane. It would be, I think, helpful to understand why history may be repeating itself. In 1905, why was it taken out of the Constitution at that time? Do we know? Do we know the context, what was going on? I didn't hear any elaboration on that.
I don't know. We could try and find out. It would require some probably research with the Historical Society or the State Library, but
it would be helpful in the context that I think in 117 years we might, when we take it out again, it would be interesting to know what happened and what the thinking was then, because I would
I think that would be interesting for research to help us with that. Thank you.
I'll have research find that out and get it out to the committee. No further questions of the proponents. I would again mention Derek Smith, Attorney General. Please read his testimony. No further proponents do I have listed. I will go to the opponents. First up is Dennis Butler, Riley County Law Enforcement Agency and Riley County Police Department. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Federal and State Affairs.
Good morning, Chair Barker and members of the Commission. Thank you for giving me some time to address this morning. You should have written testimony that I submitted through our representative, Sidney Carlin, on Tuesday. You may have seen me here before as a representative of the Legislative Committee for the Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police. I'm not here in that role today. I just want to make that very clear. I'm here representing the Riley County Law Enforcement Agency and the Riley County Police Department. I won't read verbatim any of my written testimony except for one piece that I think is really important about what happened in Riley County. And that is, I often refer to the late Don Everett as the founding father of the RCPD. I say that affectionately. He was the former Riley County attorney, state representative, House Majority Floor Leader, and state senator. His broad experience as a city commissioner, county attorney, and legislative leader provided the unique perspective to create such a model that exists in Riley County that's been in existence for over 45 years. Before I go on, I do want to acknowledge something that I think is important. When Cole Presley, Sheriff of Graham County, was the president of the KSA, he and Ed Klump came to visit me in Riley County to tell me about this resolution that was being planned and the constitutional amendment they hope to achieve. And I appreciate that courtesy very much because I then passed it on to the people I work for. And as a courtesy to them, although I was under no obligation, I provided them a copy of my testimony, at least Mr. Klump, on Wednesday morning, so they had it in advance. Many of the people sitting behind me, I hope I don't feel any holes burning through me because this is not a personal issue for me. I'm friends with many of the sheriffs sitting behind me, and I hope as I leave today we remain friends. This is about representing the interests of Riley County and the police department there. You saw in my written testimony all of the benefits that have been realized there. And one additional piece of information about when consolidation occurred that was not offered at the outset, and I don't have the dates exactly right, so bear with me on that, this was a referendum that was put to the voters about abolishing the sheriff's office, abolishing the Manhattan Police Department, and abolishing the Ogden Police Department, and creating one consolidated agency named the Riley County Police Department. All of those employees, my understanding at the time, were given opportunities to have jobs in that agency, including the sheriff who was no longer sheriff after a consolidation. The other important part is while the initial referendum didn't pass by much, and I don't know what the population of Riley County was back in the 70s, there were still some citizens that were not in favor of it. It actually went back to the voters a second time in 1977 after consolidation had occurred, and my understanding, and I don't know the exact percentage, it passed at a higher rate of approval than it did the first time. The concerns that the Riley County Law Enforcement Agency have overall about this resolution is, having been on the Legislative Committee for so long, over 10 years now, we often see bills, this is a resolution, but bills get introduced that don't end up that way when it finally is passed or goes to the voters. And that's their concern. Although the date of January of 2021 would preserve the Riley County Police Department as it exists now, there's concern if this passes out of committee and starts moving through the legislative process that that could be removed. And they feel very strongly that local voters, the ones that created the Riley County Police Department, would not have a say in whether or not it remains and continues on. Furthermore, and I mentioned this in my written testimony, the removal of that local control, the possibility of removing that, if someday down the road, I don't envision it, they did decide to deconsolidate, the way the question is written for the ballot and the way the resolution is written is they would never have that option again. And I think if you look at the statistics I provided in my written testimony about the ratio of police officers per 1,000 residents and how low it is, the costs of operating a consolidated department and the advantages there, the fact that the director, myself, or whoever holds this position, reports to basically a de facto citizens oversight board of people appointed by the city and the county, and in some cases, like now, they actually are members of that board as well. So they have influence over the appointment of the director, approval of the budget, and approval of policy. So the advantages, I think, speak for themselves about what happened there. It happened over 45 years ago. It is continuing on today very well, as I mentioned in my testimony. The crime rate in Riley County compared to the state, and we talk about Part 1 crime, my colleagues know what I'm talking about, and there's two subcomponents, violent and property, has been below the state average every single year without exception, as far back as I can get information off the KBI website, which is 2003. So for nearly 20 years, crime has been low, the costs have been lower than if you had several law enforcement agencies. The citizens of Riley County, the law board, and I would have to agree to that with them, don't want to jeopardize those efficiencies, that safe county that they live in, and that's why they're opposed to this moving forward. There are 104 counties with sheriffs, one without, and their belief is it really doesn't need to be addressed despite, the testimony you've heard earlier, because the voters in the end are the ones that make the decision. I'll stand for any questions you have. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak with you this morning.
Thank you very much, Director. Are there questions for the Director? Eric? Representative Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. If I understand you correctly, and I read through your testimony, you suggest that the cost savings alone is probably the predominant reason why you wouldn't want this to change?
It is one of the factors that I cited, the cost savings, the perpetually and consistently low crime rate, the fact that as an appointed official, it's similar if many of you have served in local government, me reporting to a city commission. So I report to a body of 7 people that exist by statute, and they, like I said in my testimony, approve the budget, hire and fire the director, and also policy. So the cost savings speak for themselves, in my opinion. The ratio of police officers per 1,000 residents is 0.5 lower than the national average of 2. We have 111 police officers serving 75,000 residents. If, for the sake of argument, we had to staff at the national average, we would have to hire almost 40 more officers. And the state ratio is even higher than that. It's at 2.85. And this data was off the KBI website that lists the number of law enforcement officers in the state and the population. And then I calculated, so it's 2.85. We would have to hire another 100 officers and it's not an apples to apples comparison. So in my opinion, and I've been a cop for 42 years, worked in police departments for 38 before coming to this unique model, I don't have any sacred cows here. I'm telling you, based on my experience, what I see.
And I apologize, I don't mean to cut you off, Mr. Chairman, a second question.
Go ahead.
So in my own research, it looks like there's at least 30 states that have it in their constitution, another 16 by state statutes, so that's 46 out of 50. In the state, we have 105 counties, aside from your county, that leaves 104, and you're suggesting that the consolidation creates a better crime resolution than this system that has been set up across the United States. And I'm not trying to be flippant about this, but the assertions that you make in your testimony, I think need some basis.
Well, the assertions I'm making are based on my experiences in Riley County and comparing that data with other areas of the state. The other thing that I mentioned, and my research probably isn't as thorough as Mr. Horton's, is I don't know about the number of constitutional requirements for the office of sheriff. I do know from my research there's 2 states that don't have sheriff's offices at all. One is Alaska and the other one is Connecticut. That's the other state that has no sheriffs. So I am not here, as I have told Mr. Klump and others, to bash sheriff's offices. I'm here to advocate for a model that exists now and based on my 40 years of experience is working very well, and it has for over 45 years. And the folks that asked me to come and talk today didn't make me do this, because what I'm telling you is my own research and my own beliefs based on that 40 years of experience about the advantages of consolidation in Riley County. And they worry about that being jeopardized.
Thank you. WebEx, do we have any questions for those folks that are on WebEx? No questions? I, being a little older than most of my committee members except 1 or 2, I remember when they were doing the consolidations in Riley County, and there were a lot of trade-offs. The sheriff didn't object to that because they gave him a lifetime position as in charge of the jail. He ended up running the jail for the next 20, 25 years, and he didn't have to run for election. The city of Ogden agreed to it because in the agreement they guaranteed a law enforcement officer, and they kept the same law enforcement officers that they'd had before, the city police. And I don't know if that agreement's still in time, but they had to keep one there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In the city of Riley, there was also, they cut an agreement to keep an officer there a certain amount of time. So when they did that consolidation, there were a lot of trade-offs to get the backing of the sheriff and several other law enforcement officers. But I'm looking at the resolution, and I guess my question is, you are exempt. Raleigh County is exempt. If this concurrent resolution passes, and passes by the majority that's needed in the House and the Senate, Raleigh County would not be affected at all. But you're saying your fear is maybe it would get amended.
Yeah, the concern is, as written, you are correct, Chairman.
Right. Okay.
But if that changes through this legislative process, that is the concern of the Law Board, the Riley County Law Enforcement Agency, they're known as the Law Board, has about this resolution and amendment.
And I appreciate that, because a lot of bills that come in and when they leave, they don't resemble the original.
And you may know that it's about every year, every other year, a phantom bill shows up that requires the election of a sheriff in Riley County that doesn't go anywhere, but there's still those efforts.
And I agree. Now, you answer to a 7-member board.
Yes, by statute that was enabled when consolidation occurred, the only permanent member is the county attorney. Everyone else on the board is appointed by City of Manhattan and county officials. Every other year, the balance of the board shifts to favor either the county or the city.
I remember when that happened, but those members are not elected by the people.
They are not. Some of the board members by statute are elected officials from both the city and the county, and then there are citizen positions that are also provided for. Sometimes those are also occupied by elected officials. There's always elected officials on the board.
All right. I see no further questions. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, can I ask you one quick question?
Yes, sir.
Is it safe for me to turn around and take my seat?
I guarantee you're in the company of a number of honorable people.
Thank you.
They may disagree, but they're not disagreeable.
Well, we do occasionally, but we always seem to be friends, and I hope that stays true. Thank you.
I'm sure it will. I'm going to go now. I see no other opponents. I'm going to go to the neutrals, and Representative Dodson is here. I'm going to give him the courtesy of speaking first as a neutral. Representative Dodson from Raleigh County.
You may have to help me turn this on again. It's actually an orange light. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity just to say a few words, kind of in a neutral position. As you can imagine, being from Riley County, I'm kind of obligated to be here. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge these great professionals behind me here. Having served in the military for 37 years, I have a great appreciation for law enforcement, what they have to do every day, and particularly what they've done during the past couple of years, keeping us safe during these special circumstances. I guess where I would start is my strong preference for these kinds of things is to have them decided at the local level. We've gone through some real angst over the past few months. On the 22nd of November, we gave some significant pushback because people were giving us mandates and we didn't like it. And we have such unique counties that I think that uniqueness needs to be appreciated. And because each county is different, I would prefer that they be given the opportunity to decide for themselves. Just for Riley County, as you may know, we also have KSU that has its own police department. When we consolidated, things got a little bit cheaper. We were able to provide services as a result of that consolidation that we wouldn't ordinarily have. I mean, if you have a sheriff's department and you have a police department, obviously you've got separation, each one is smaller than the whole. So we were able to do things like co-responders, run the jail. All the time, there's a book about this thick. I'll have to ask Dennis if I get this right, but I think it's called Kolika. Is that right? It's the kind of the set of standards that one has to practice when you're in the police business. So just suffice it to say, Riley County attorneys were also worried about the same thing that Director Butler stated, which is, man, we're one of 105 and we're different, and we just hope it makes it through in the same way it is. We appreciate the language the way it is, and I appreciate the opportunity just to say a few words here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative, would you stand for questions? Is there questions for Representative Dotson? Seeing none, thank you. We have one other neutral, Clancy Holman, Raleigh County Counselor. He's on WebEx. Are you on, sir? Do we have him on?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Can you
All
hear
right,
me?
please go forward with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak today on a neutral position. As an attorney, it's kind of unique circumstances. I kind of like being neutral. I may do this from now on, but I do want to emphasize, as my written testimony does, that this is a neutral position. It is not the position of my client, because I do not know what my client's position is yet. And that's the reasons for that are just described as just a matter of happenstance on the calendar as to when they would have their next meeting. They actually are going to talk about the House Concurrent Resolution 5022 today during their first available public meeting. And I expect at that time they will clarify what their position is on this. But my own personal view is all I'm presenting today, and I would echo the kind of what's been said by Director Butler in terms of the concern is that from my point of view, I would echo the concern that provided the exception for Riley County remains in place, you know, that's the concern I want to raise on my own individual basis. And I give the reasons why in my written testimony. First of all, the public, the voters, have had from the beginning the ability to end consolidated law enforcement in Riley County. That could end by petition or by resolution through the governing bodies. And also, even the funding of this consolidated law enforcement has been something that the remaining partners in that funding, the City of Manhattan and Riley County, can every year have the opportunity to change if they can do so by agreement. So with those matters of local control being foremost in my mind, that's why I'm testifying today as a neutral, but echoing the concern that as the bill stands as an individual, it seems to recognize that something has worked in Riley County with consolidated law enforcement. And I personally have, as an individual, have no issues with House Concurrent Resolution 5022, provided that that exception remains for something that has worked in Riley County for nearly 50 years. With that, I will stand for any questions from the committee.
Questions for the conferee? Seeing none, thank you, sir, for appearing today by WebEx.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone else in the audience? I have no others listed. I would ask the director of the Sheriff's Association, executive director, to supply that testimony about that, your information you provided. If there's no other testimony, I will close the hearing on House Concurrent Resolution 5022. Committee, we're meeting Monday, but you need not show up. I'm just going to do bill introductions. Tuesday, we have a hearing from the research. I would like for you to be here for that. And we have a House bill too that we'll do a hearing on. But there'll be a couple of days next week that we will meet. You can appear by WebEx, but most of that will be for bill introductions. I have a number of bills that people have indicated they want to introduce. Representative Clayton, please.
Just a committee rules clarification. Shouldn't we all definitely be here on WebEx, at least on Monday, so that we have a quorum? Because we won't be able to introduce bills without a quorum, right?
That is correct. And I was going to
Okay,
mention
so we
that.
still got to make sure we log in.
You have to log in.
All right.
But you can appear by WebEx. The only thing we will do after we get a quorum is introduce 2 or 3 bills. And then on Tuesday, we'll do a hearing and do an information from the interim committee. And then there will probably be changes. I've got several bills that have been introduced. It's not been read in. Hopefully they'll be in today and we'll get them read in and get them assigned back to us. And I'll be setting some hearings probably the latter part of next week. I will tell you we're not going to meet on Friday. Since I'm on redistricting, we're going to meet every Friday, it looks like, until we get it done. And it's going to be from 9 until 1 or 2 every day. So. And Representative Miller sits with me on that, and Representative Clayton. So on some of those days when we're going to go pro forma, you folks get to go home, and we get to earn our money. We'll be here on those pro forma days. With that, anything good for the good of the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.